You're listening to the So What? Why It Matters podcast with Nancy Hicks. Each week we'll ask the question, so what? And dive into the answers of why it matters with Nancy and her guest. Are you ready for some honest conversation about the so what's in your life? Here we go.
Hi everyone, Nancy Hicks here. Welcome back to So What? Why It Matters podcast. We're forging ahead in our Better Communications series, and I'm loving the topics in this series that our team picked to unpack with you: the listening, the connecting. So let me set the scene for what we're going to talk about today. When we look at the ways we communicate with our family and our friends and our colleagues, most of us use sort of the same 2 or 3 methods pretty consistently. Whether we're texting, typing emails, staying connected through social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. We're all sort of set in our ways. And we even talk to the same people too. Think about it. When was the last time you made a new friend? Not that it's been easy to meet new people and expand our horizons in a pandemic. Trust me, I do get that. But when I think about the ways we could connect with each other a little more deeply through the ways we communicate, I think about all the conversations we might be missing out on simply because we haven't been open. It takes time to be open. It's scary to be open. Vulnerability can feel terrifying, like we're putting ourselves out on a limb with no guarantee we won't fall in the mud, look silly, be embarrassed, or worse, that someone might actually hurt the soft interior we try so hard to protect. But listen, I've learned that any relationship worth having means risking a little bit. Because no matter what, you're going to get tenfold in return. And that includes the barbs and stings that are going to come your way for sure. And to jumpstart those relationships, we have to learn to stay curious. Because curious people keep their eyes and their ears open to new people and new opportunities. Curious people ask questions. You learn more, and it will take you deeper, and that's where the good stuff is. So today, I'm so pleased to share my conversation with a young woman who's been thinking about the ways that we move through the world and share our stories with each other. And her name is Morgan Harper Nichols, and I know most of you know her work. Morgan's a triple threat. She's an artist, a poet, and a musician who's inspired millions of people through her art. She's the author of a beautiful book of poetry called All Along You Were Blooming. Isn't that gorgeous? And a brand new one called How Far You Have Come. Plus, she's the host of a podcast called The Morgan Harper Nichols Show. Okay, when does this woman sleep? I'm not sure, but I have to tell you that I'm already inspired by her sheer work ethic alone. And here's the thing about Morgan. Whether she's cheering on her followers to push past their obstacles and follow their dreams, or whether she's tackling some of the hardest and most important issues of our time, like systemic racism, she's a master at sharing her heart with her audience. And we're going to talk with her about the ways she stays curious and engaged with the world around her, even when it's tough. I think you'll really enjoy hearing from Morgan. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Morgan Harper Nichols. Morgan, I am so grateful, dear woman, that you took the time and that you said yes to having this conversation with me today. Welcome.
Oh, well, thank you for the warm welcome. I'm so excited and grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're doing this Better Communication series, and our whole topic today is openness and curiosity, which you apparently do in spades, which is exactly why we wanted to talk. For those who don't know what you do, could you talk a little bit about what it is you actually do?
Yes. So I am an artist and a musician and a poet. And I would say that a lot of what I do kind of falls into those 3 categories in some capacity. And it is inspired by, especially over the past, I would say 3 coming up on 4 years, of just realizing that I've always been very creative. However, I have dealt with a lot of self-doubt in my life. And I found that when the thing that unlocked me from my self-doubt that kept me from creating or sharing, in a full way, the thing that kind of unlocked me from that was when I realized that, oh, just by talking to people and by connecting with people one-on-one, like that's where creativity really starts to stir for me. So since 2017, I posted on my Instagram story in October of 2017. I said, hey, if you would like for me to write something for your story, just as a response to your story, make some art. And at the time, I'm not like a trained artist. Like I had an iPad and I had figured out like one little squiggly brush and how to draw like a little, like a little stick figure version of a mountain. I was not.
That makes it even more fascinating. Yeah.
I'm not like a trained artist. I love to draw. I've always loved it, but I'm not like a trained artist. I just felt compelled to just like, I don't know what it is. I want to try things creatively, but I get so stuck in my head. So let me just make this a service, a practice of generosity so that I can stop getting so stuck in like, oh, I don't have enough to give. Like I'm not talented enough or whatever. So I started that in October 2017. And within the first 24 hours, I had over 100 DMs from people who didn't even follow me. I didn't even have like a lot of followers at that time. People are just saying, hey, I heard you're letting people just send you stories and then you respond to them. And I thought that I would do that for like a week or two. And I thought it would wear me out and maybe maybe I would stop doing it because I am an introvert. Like I need my alone time. And I thought maybe I would just do it for a little bit. But here we are in 2021 and I'm still doing that. And for me, it has just been such an humbling and just a beautiful practice for me to just remember that, yeah, this whole thing, everything that we do and everything that we share, it's about connection and relationship. And there are flickers of that even when it comes to the story from a stranger. And it's like, we don't have to know someone deeply or intimately to have empathy for their story. And I feel like that's like the biggest lesson that I'm learning from this. And I continue to learn.
There's something about a person, a man or a woman, child or elderly person, who once you start to understand some of these principles, whether you are artistic or not, you can learn. This is why we desperately need the arts, which we're not talking about today, but that's a whole other story for another time, right? To open us up. Because I love what you said when you can kind of get your head out of the way, right? If you get stuck in your head, man, what we have got locked in our heads will just shut us down. Just shut us down. So I just want to say, for those who do not know, 1.6 million people on Instagram resonate with what Morgan is talking about, resonate with the generosity. You are connecting your generosity of spirit. So what inspires you? Who inspires you to share this generosity and this openness the way you do?
Well, honestly, I'm inspired by many people and many things, but it comes back for me a lot to my parents. I mean, I am blessed to have parents who I saw practice generosity in their lives. My parents were in ministry, pastors, I was homeschooled. And to be honest, growing up, I'm more introverted, and my mom especially is definitely high energy extroverted. And I used to be like, more people at the house again? Like, you're not tired yet?
Wow.
And I kind of struggled for a while. I'm just like, because I had this sort of inner tension of like, I like connecting with people and I liked what we were doing and the ways that our family was serving. But at the same time, I felt inadequate because I felt like I didn't have enough energy and I didn't have, I was just more introspective. And for any introvert who's ever been in ministry, you know what I'm talking about. Like you're just like, where do I even belong here? Like, I don't have that energy. Like, what am I supposed to do? So it wasn't a unique, situation in that extent. But to go back to your question of inspiration, I didn't see it at the time. But when I look back, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm just doing a different version of what I saw my parents do. And that was just opening the door and letting people in. And yeah, that's one of my biggest inspirations. And then beyond that, oh, wow, I could go on and on. Like there's so many artists and poets and musicians.
Who's your favorite artist? One.
Oh, Karita Kent. If anyone has any sort of flicker or inkling or curiosity about art, I say start with her. She is a Catholic nun and also a professor, artist. She was just amazing.
Love it.
I even sitting right here, I have like all of her books, all of her work, love her. And then poets, it's hard to pick one. It's so hard, but I would say, so I got to pick two. I'm so sorry. I would say T.S. Eliot, because he was the
Beautiful.
first poet that I read that made something happen inside of me that said, wait a second, there's something to that I'm curious about. I was like, this man's talking about Michelangelo and Lazarus in the same poem. I'm like, whatever that is, I want to be a part of that. And then I would say, secondly, is Maya Angelou. And that's just because, when I see what she accomplished in her lifetime, I think of myself as a Black woman poet. I'm like, I could not do this without women like her.
I love it.
Who paved the way for someone like me. So there are times where if I'm getting stressed out about like, Instagram algorithm or whatever, sometimes I just ask myself, I'm like, would Maya care about this? No.
So I just want to be really specific for people who, again, don't know. You put out there in 2017, you said to people, hey, share your story with me. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it into a poem, art. I'm going to develop this. And then what do? Do you put it on your website? Do you put it out there on social media? What do you do?
Yeah, it happens in different ways. So when I have like an email inbox that's been going since 2017, and then obviously I have the Instagram DM as well. And I just randomly scroll through and I stop on someone's name, and that's all I have. I don't see like a subject or anything. And I click on their name, and I have a rule. When I open it, I have to respond. So sometimes it takes me time to respond. Sometimes I respond right away, but there are some that I've sat on for weeks and they've just sat in my drafts, and I'm just like, okay, I'll get to this person and, really sit with what they've shared with me. So what I do is whoever I'm writing for, I send it to them first. And then I just let them know, I'm like, you can do whatever you want with this. Like you can share it or you can just keep it to yourself. It's up to you. And then that's when it goes out to the world. So it really is just sort of like a moment. I always like to keep that there where I send it to them, because that helps me keep the frame of mind that, okay, yes, it's possible that millions of people may see this, but never forget that it was for one person. Never forget that
I love that.
you made this for one person and you sent it to them as a gift. When you give someone a gift, you're not worried about like, how well will this perform? Like, will this become a product later? You're not worried about that. You're just like, I'm going to give this to this person as a gift. And then as a result of that, I can't not take credit for this part because I did not know this would happen. As a result of that, just by sharing, all of this art that I've written and I've created, I have gotten collaboration opportunities with like making journals and things like that. And I'm not kidding. I can take zero credit for, yes, I made the art, but like, I remember I got my first proposal. They're like, here's some journals that we can do with your art. I'm like, you mean for my Instagram? Like, are you sure?
And who are some of the other collaborators? Like I see like Coach and different.
Yes. I mean, I've collaborated quite a bit with Anthropology, and I've collaborated, like you said, with Coach a couple of times, and with Adobe, which is really surreal because I use Adobe's Creative Suite every day to make my art. And yes, it is pretty wild. I mean, I've been able to see my work in store displays, and it's really, really unexpected. I had no idea that was going to happen. This was honestly just like, this is something that I just want to do right now. And I don't know what's going to come of it in the future. So yeah. And I have to say, I'm a visionary when it comes to art, but I can't think of this stuff. Like even the prints that are on my website that I sell, that was my husband's idea. Like I can't even take credit for that. So I'm grateful for people that look at what I do and see, oh wow, this can become something else.
So okay, so let's just pause here for a second, because Morgan, it's occurring to me that may be the secret sauce to you and for our listener, that you're not getting caught up in like there's not an agenda. And I think that as I'm listening to you, I really realize you're like, no, I'm going back to first things, which is this beautiful generosity. I'm going to go back to the words openness, I'm going to stay curious and let's see what happens. You seem chill about that. Are you always chill about that, or do you ever get a little afraid? Like, now I want to go down that path.
Yes. Okay. So here's what's weird. I feel like in every other area of my life, yeah, no, I am
Really?
I am kind of like closed off. Like I'm just like, oh, I don't really know.
Like, give me an example. What area?
Okay, here's an
Even
example.
Morgan.
So I am 30 years old. I'm about to turn 31. And
Get out.
I only have a birthday party a decade. That's all I can handle. I'm like, I appreciate everyone for wanting to celebrate my life. Thank you. But I can't do that level of energy. I have a 19-month-old son and I cannot keep up. I mean, it's me, him, my husband, and caffeine. I'm just like, I can't keep up with you.
Is that Jacob, your 19-month-old?
Yes,
Jacob?
He is so filled with energy and I love it. And at the same time, I'm always out of breath. And I'm just like, why? Why am I always tired? Like, we actually got sleep last night. Like, why am I exhausted? So yeah, that's a question I ask a lot. I'm like, why am I so tired? Why am I so exhausted? It's a pandemic and I sit at home all the time. Why am I still tired? And because of that, I end up like, if somebody asks me to do something, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have the energy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. But for some reason, and I truly believe it's grace, for some reason, when it comes to art and when it comes to music and really all that I do with art, that's a place where I just feel free to let go. And I don't know. And I've tried to figure out why is that? It's, when I was in music full time, I mean, I had some really cool moments that I'm grateful for, but I didn't go off to like win Grammys or have, these highlight experiences. But I'm like, I don't know what it is within me that made me keep going and keep being curious about art. And even after I didn't have the successes and I didn't make enough money to pay the bills
Yeah.
with music, like,
honey, I've been there.
I don't know what it is. And for me, I feel like there's so much grace in that to not know. And I feel like that's where God speaks to me the most clearly. I will say that I feel like it is a sacred space. It is a holy space for me to sit and to be able to just let go through art, because it's hard to feel like in the real world that you're just free to just let go and make mistakes and just try things. That's hard in real life. So for me, art is that place of like, here's where you can practice letting go, not trying to control everything, surrender. So yeah, in that way, I would say that art is definitely a spiritual practice for me. And I think that maybe that's why I keep kind of coming back to it in that sense. So
I love that because I imagine there are times even in that sacred holy space that you even have those blocks that you have to move through, right?
Yes,
I don't know if you have a
yes.
story or an example of that.
This is what I love about digital art. So I'm making things in layers. Sometimes, if there's something going on in the world or even in my family, there's been a lot of health issues in my family that I'm just frustrated about or I just don't have answers for. I'll just allow myself to use that black brush and just scribble and just write out my frustrations. And then sometimes I leave it there just like that. But then there are some times where I'm like, okay, now that I've gotten out, I'm going to paint over it. And I'll go to like a blush or I'll go to like a gold and I'll just start painting with it or painting over it. And for me, that's such an example of just like the room within grace to really express like, yeah, there's some really crazy stuff going on right now. And you might be totally angry or confused, and not even just globally, like just personally in our lives, just maybe even something going on in your family, or you're just like, this really annoys me or frustrates me or angers me, and I don't know what it is. So I have pieces that are out there right now that are on my Instagram where someone may look at it and all they see is a flower. And that's ultimately what I ended up maybe sending to that person that I wrote. I sent them the flower, but I know beneath those layers was me actually scribbling out or writing out something that was frustrating me, a lament that I had. And yeah, I think that for me, that's what keeps my art in this sort of sacred space, which is just so important to me right now. Because it is hard once you start sharing, so much out there in the world, you can start to feel like, what's mine? Like how it's weird to have my personal story out there. So I like to keep, and in that way, it's like those little hidden layers become kind of like a prayer journal. And I know they're there. Nobody else has to know they're there.
In terms of communication, you're using this incredible means to communicate. You're taking their stories, and I use the word intersecting with your own, who you are as this powerful, loving, generous woman. And it's these two people that, I believe with all my heart, God is going, yep. And something pretty powerful happens right about now. But here's what I'm also hearing. That's true, but it's not always easy. And that there's this backstory to this idea of us connecting and then putting something out to the world. This backstory of layers and layers and layers that have to be worked through.
Yes.
While we're trying to get to the beauty, the flower, whatever it is that you ultimately will put out there. Friends, I'm so excited to share with you that registration is officially open for my new course, Awaken. Awaken is for women who are fed up with walking through their lives half asleep with little to no purpose or direction. It's for women who are ready to shrug off the toxic expectations and limitations they've taken on from the church, loved ones, and themselves, and instead step into full, godly 3D womanhood. It's for those who are thinking right now, yes, I'm so ready to take off my mask, get honest, and live fully alive. This work won't be easy. It's going to get gritty and messy. But I guarantee if you stick with it, you'll come out on the other end truly awake and unmasked with a vision in hand that brings you joy, purpose, and direction. Join me this February for Awaken. Learn more and register for Awaken by visiting nancyhickslive.com/awaken or finding the link in our show notes. I wanted to ask you, so with this little lamb of yours, little Jacob, how will you, because I do think that art is one of these tremendous gifts from God that help us really stay open, that help us stay curious, that help us stay interested, help us lean in as opposed to become rigid and, hightail it out of there when we see something or we don't understand. You make a statement and I don't relate. I don't understand. It's too different. You're too different. You look too different. You act too different. You talk too, and we, whether you're self-identify as a Christian or not, but we go, bye-bye. I can't deal with this, as opposed to, wait a second. What did you say? Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me, how are you going to, or maybe you've already begun. How will you as a mom, see there, my Canadian just came out. I'm from Toronto.
I love it. I love it.
Originally, but as a mom, how will you help your beautiful little boy learn this beautiful spiritual practice, not the art piece, but the essence of staying open to difference, to others?
That's something I think about a lot. And, regardless of if he even likes visual art or not, my hope is to just put things in front of him that he knows that when it's hard to figure out what he's feeling or to work through something, or even if it's hard to talk to us about it, like as his parents, of giving him things of like, here's a place where God will meet you. Here's a place where there's grace. And I think that may be a guitar, that may be, some clay, that may be learning how to garden, or I don't know what it is, but I just want to, because I do think that we need more. This is something I've been writing a lot about. I haven't shared it much, but I've just been writing a lot about it in my journal. And especially I feel like I see this in a lot of church settings. I'm like, I think we need more middle ground spaces. Let's not just be like, how can I get you to come to church or come to Bible study? Like, how can we sit together as human beings and talk about what actually connects us? Oh, many of us are afraid to die. Many of us are afraid to live. Many of us have fears. Many of us have doubts. Many of us are grieving. And I feel like art is a way of doing that. And art's not the only thing. But I do hope that when it comes to raising him, that he knows that he has permission to not hold it all in, not feel like you have to be perfect and get it all right. And that, there's grace for you to really work through whatever it is that he is going to work through. Because even with naming him Jacob, like I was very intentional about that because Jacob wrestled with God. And it's just like, for me, it's like, I was like, he's going to wrestle with something. I don't know what. I mean, and, I don't want to be a parent who's like, oh, no, you're a kid. You don't have issues. Like, no, even little kids, like they go through things, like little kids get bullied. I mean, and then when you even think about the uncertainty and all these little kids growing up during a pandemic and
Oh my
how
gosh.
hard that's going to be. I'm like, he's going to have some question. He's going to have something that he's like, how do I work through this? And that's why, of course, I didn't know about the pandemic, but that's why Jacob was a very important name for me because I was just like, I want him to know that there's permission to wrestle. And within that wrestling, there's also grace. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm what I
Yeah.
think about.
So we have a son, Aaron, our younger son. We have two boys. And our younger son, Aaron, when he was little, so my boys now are grown. And our younger son, Aaron, when he was just a bitty guy, I mean, on the one hand, he was so fierce. And he was so fierce, in fact, that he would stand up to his older brother, David, who is like his mother, very like take the hill and very intense, David and I. Aaron is much more like his father. He's a strong leader, but he's quieter. He's more introspective. They're both introverts. So, we're really different. But Aaron was so strong. In fact, he'd stand up to David. If David was hurting him, which he always did, hurting, Herd, moving him this way. Come on, you're going this way. Aaron would go, nope. And he'd go his own way. And I watched that as his mom thinking, good job. Good job. Be who you are, Aaron. And I'm thinking about this for any mom who's listening, mom or dad, who's listening to us, because I think that's one of the things that we were very mindful of. Because I think sometimes we're not able to have harder conversations with people. We're not able to allow people the space to be who they really are, whether they believe what we believe, whether their politics are the same as ours, whether we express ourselves differently in myriad ways, because we just don't understand. We're afraid of what it could mean. So going back to your idea of this middle ground spaces, like we don't want those middle ground. We want black or white. You're either on this side or you're on that side. Pick your side, and now I'll know where you are, and I can avoid you or I can join you. Which is like, good Lord, help us.
Yeah, that is something that I think about a lot because, again, I think it's really, and I say this for myself, like it's easy for me to kind of go to like the global scale or even like a nationwide scale. But I think we forget it's like, even when it comes to our own families, it's like, even if everyone's like, oh yeah, we're all the same. No, you're not. Like
No, we're
everyone's
not.
different. It's like in order to be able to sit down at that table and have a meal, there is so much humility and patience and that has to go into place in order for that meal to be a healthy, safe space for everyone. So I think that it's a conversation that I want to start having more. And I hope that I can model that, like not only for my child, but for the next generation. And that's what I hope that my art is, honestly. Like, I hope it's a space that, again, I can't take credit for this. It just started happening. And then I was like, oh, I guess that's what it is. But I started to receive messages from people that said, hey, I have a friend who's going through a really hard time and they're just having a lot of questions. And I send them your art because I don't know what to say. So it serves as like a middle thing. And I was like, oh, that's really like, I couldn't have thought of that myself. Like, that is not what I had in mind. But the fact that that's happened, I'm like, okay, yeah, we need that. And it takes humility because it's, sometimes like my ego does get to me. And I'm like, I want to say something profound or powerful. And it's always those times where I tried that and it doesn't come across the way I wanted it to. I have to surrender and I have to let go and I have to let that thing be and what it needs to be and put that art out between in the middle of me and that other person and let them take from it whatever they want to take from it. And it's honestly a moment where I'm probably most proud of myself. Like it was one of my more proud moments when it comes to criticism. I had this guy leave a comment and he said, oh, all your posts are sounding the same. He was like, everything sounds the same. Like you need to write about something new. And I responded to him and I said, or maybe this is the moment where you go and you realize that there are some other voices that I need to listen to. I was like, because I'm only one voice. I was like, if I'm starting to sound familiar, I was like, yeah, because you need to diversify. I was like, maybe there's somebody in your hometown or that you went to college with that's also a poet. And are you following her? Are you following them? Are you engaging with what they have to say? And I was just really proud of my response. And I don't even think he responded, but my heart behind it was just like, even if my art is a turning point that makes you say, oh, I don't like this. Well, maybe this is an opportunity to go find what you do like.
I love that you weren't proprietary about him either. You're like, like I'm one voice. You should be listening to
I'm
different
like, yeah,
voices.
I'm not going to write about everything because I'm not everybody. Even though at this point, I've literally read thousands of stories, but that doesn't give me any ownership of, well, now I can speak on X. I'm like, no, I still haven't been through that. Like I can't tell that story. So yeah, you have to go find other people to listen to. So yeah.
I love that. So before I ask my last question, I just want to know, so what? What is like for my listener, for our listener today who's going, what do I do with what in terms of communication, staying open and curious? One tip, what can I take from our conversation with you and actually do today?
If even on your best days, the days where you're feeling your absolute best, or you're like, I'm just chilling, everything's great. You have a neighbor who's having the exact opposite day. You have someone in your family that's having the exact opposite day. Even when we're sharing our best moments, our highlights on social media, there's someone scrolling through who is at the lowest place of their life. And we have two choices. We can either ignore that tension and say, well, I'm good. I'm just going to do my thing. Or we can say, I'm going to hold that messy tension and make sure I make space for that person too. And I feel like that's what the work we do has to be about. Whatever it is, it's I'm going to do something that holds space for that person who feels unseen. Because no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter how old, young you are, there's somebody in your life right now who feels unseen. And I'm not saying that you have the power to change everything in their situation, but you do have the power to create a moment where that person feels like they're a little less alone, or that person is reminded of grace. And I think it's a responsibility, honestly. I think as human beings, that's our responsibility. We have to look out for each other. We absolutely have to. And I know that I'm where I am today because of people who've looked out for me. People who didn't have to. I had a college professor who literally, I was on my third school in my second year. I'm losing scholarship money, in debt, about to give up on all creativity because I was just like, I'm failing, can't do this. And he pulled me to the side for an assignment that I turned in and said, I don't know if anyone ever told you this, but you're a poet. And he was like, here's how you can be a poet professionally. And in 5 minutes, he turned my complete course around for me. And I didn't even know it was possible. Now, granted, it took me 10 years to get back to that point again. But I'm like, that community college professor did not have to do that. I was one of how many students? And yet I know that I'm here today. Like, he's a part of my story.
Oh my
That's
golly.
a part of who I am. That was a turning point. So I feel like, going back to your question of like, so what? It's like, so what? The world needs more people who are generous, who are open, who are willing to give of themselves, even if they don't have to. And I think that the world will be a better place the more we can all, myself included, practice that more in our daily life. So yeah.
I love that. And Morgan, thank you. Morgan, you are, and I knew this when I started looking into you more and more, doing my work and looking and thinking, my golly, this woman is a powerhouse for the kingdom, is a powerhouse for all humanity. And I'm just grateful to, genuinely grateful for the conversation today. And I want to make sure that our listener knows how to connect with you. So resources, and I'd love to know if there's any upcoming projects. What you got coming, Morgan?
Yes. So I have a new book coming out in March 2021. So excited. It's called How Far You Have Come. It's a book of poetry and essays that follow a journey from the state of Georgia to the state of California, a road trip that I've taken across the course of my life many times. And I stop in each of those states and I tell stories. And I'm so excited to share that project. And I also have a podcast too. So yes. So yeah, I don't have a fun name. Your podcast is such a wonderful name. Mine's is just Morgan Harper Nichols.
Listen, I love
anything,
it.
So
it's very clear. It's very clear.
So yeah, you can come hang out with me over there. And of course on Instagram, Morgan Harper Nichols.
I love it. Morgan, you are fabulous. Thank you so much for being with me on So What? Why It Matters. It matters, doesn't it?
Yes, I love it. Love
matters.
It.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a woman. I absolutely loved spending time with this young woman, Morgan Harper Nichols. What an incredible can-do person. And when I think about better communication and I think about my so what moments with her, I keep landing on space, creating space. Morgan kept talking about this place where there is more common ground. And it made me think about bridges, about middle ground, spaces where we can connect. And I absolutely love the way that she talked about her son, Jacob. He's only 19 months old right now. But she reminded us that the name Jacob means to wrestle. We need space to wrestle. We need to create these spaces where we can wrestle through to begin to build these bridges of understanding. And we do that by staying open and staying curious. So, when I think about something that you can actually do with what you've heard today, I'm going to give you one thought that I learned, and that's this. When you hear something that sounds different, sounds maybe a little bit unappealing, you're not accustomed to it, something that you feel uncomfortable with immediately, something that just sounds maybe utterly different to you, you're like, what the heck? I want you to just relax, take a breath. I want to encourage you to stay open. Just calm down. If there's defensiveness or judgment coming up for you, maybe even some fear, just calmly say, what am I afraid of right now? What is it that I'm running away from? And instead, choose to lean in. Christians sometimes struggle the most with this kind of stuff. So I want to encourage you, especially if you self-identify as a Christian, to know that God is in the middle of your struggle. He's right there with you in the space, in the curiosity. He's got you. I want to say a big thanks to my podcast team at Four Eyes Media. Thanks, Amy Kerr, our producer, Caitlin Hine, who books our fabulous guests, and our executive producer, Laura Knightsling. And thank you for listening today. There's more to come next week, a brand new episode that I can't wait to share with you. So until next time, live for what matters.
Thanks for joining Nancy for another episode of So What? Why It Matters. Come back next week for more lively conversation and answers to those so what moments in your life. And be sure to subscribe to the So What podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the show, please give us a review and tell us why. And if you don't, as Nancy would say, so what? Just kidding. All your reviews matter. So until next time, live for what matters.